various receipts documenting individuals other than the card holders, such as contract laborers, independent contractors, and volunteers. We noted the authority started paying credit cards online versus by check, so that the actual bill could be approved and reviewed, and only a check with 2 signatures going out, so we want them to refrain from that. We noted a substantial number of expenditures which had no receipts documenting the expense, along with some questionable expenses which have been appropriately talked about in the paper, including an Apple iPad, a PlayStation 3, along with an extended warranty, staff parties and dinners, and clothing. So we do recommend, if the authority even continues to use credit cards, that everything be handled appropriately as to their use. And we further recommend that the authority consider reserving the use of credit cards for emergency purposes only, and require all employees to submit eligible expenses on an expense report for reimbursement. Other recommendations, strictly recommendations, I know I'm over 5 minutes.
No, you're fine.
Background checks should be done for, we recommend that formal background checks and credit checks be done for all current authority board members and any ones in the future, and for all key personnel. Keeping in mind that the advertising authorities are unique compared to anyone else that you appoint, because they do have fiduciary responsibility for a significant amount of funds. And so that's a little bit different. And really, that recommendation goes across the board. It's not just for, it's for all the advertising authorities. Pay increases, semi-annual bonuses, and health insurance benefits. There's some things in there that we talk about, how things were handled that were not necessarily illegal, but perhaps they weren't prudent. And what we're recommending there actually is that in light of the current economic environment and the fact that the majority of County of Volusia employees did not receive pay increases during fiscal years 2010 or 11, and received only a 3.5% increase effective October 1st, 2011. That we recommend a published pay scale be adopted for all employees with pay increases mirroring those received by the County of Volusia general employees. In addition, we recommend all raises, bonuses, if any, and benefits be brought to the board. And a maintenance of formal contracts and agreements. They do provide funding to the Port Orange South Daytona Chamber of Commerce, but that agreement has expired and they haven't updated it. These last 3 things were strictly recommendations. So I'm hoping that is helpful. That gives you, Mrs. Alexander and Mrs. Cusack were both there yesterday, so I know they were able to hear my report in its entirety, but perhaps that gives you a little bit better thing to go on.
Bernadette, I really do appreciate it.
You are so welcome.
I just want you to know how much I appreciate it. I wanted you to know how much I appreciate you outlining the deficiencies, and also how much I appreciate the recommendations. Because I guess I just had one question before I go to Mr. Deneen, and that is, do you look at the authenticity of invoices?
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I just want to ask the question about that. So you did look into all of those types of things as well?
Well, we didn't look at every single invoice. No. For me to tell you we looked at every single invoice would be an unfair representation. But certainly, you know, if you see something that is questionable, it makes you look at more things. And we absolutely looked at whether or not invoices were questionable, and that actually led us down the path, to tell you the truth, of the renovation project. And that we saw that the invoices all looked the same, because they were in fact, when it was represented to us that the workers would write their hours down on one sheet of paper, which was not maintained, and then at the authority they would type up an invoice for each independent contractor, which in my opinion generally, if someone is not in the habit of preparing their own invoices and doing that type of thing, chances are they aren't truly an independent contractor but an employee.
Well, again, I want to thank you for your thoroughness on this, and I also want to thank our staff that went down there and worked to get this all resolved
County staff has been wonderful through this whole process.
We had a
Thank
great
you
team
so
that
much.
went down there, and I appreciate all of them. Mr. Denny?
Okay, Mr. Chair, maybe I can clarify and explain, because this is a very unusual situation, and it is far from over. We're still in the middle of it. What Bernadette did, which was somewhat unusual but very prudent, because she's both your auditor, and she also has audited them, and they're a separate entity you've given authority to. Now, you gave them authority. Now, they abused that authority, in my opinion. You gave them the authority. And so there are restrictions on how this information can get out, because there could be criminal or definitely civil implications in terms of court. What Bernadette did was, she knows how we operate here, knows how Charlene and I feel about how money's handled, and when she saw, which turned out to be the tip of the iceberg, she actually came to Charlene and I. When she did, she asked us what we thought about some of this. We all agreed to interview the executive director. She did. That lasted 3 hours. They taped that meeting. We got additional information from the minutes. We got the recordings. And from that, I understood that we had a very serious problem. And believe it or not, we didn't know most of what you know here. And so at that point, what we have been is obligated to internally, without, see, none of this is official, and I can't release anything until the auditor finishes her report, because it's not, she just did. Now, what was been happening was, because she came to us, this situation is still unraveling, okay, or I should say we're trying to unravel it. It became so complicated that our staff became intimately involved in looking for documentation, and quite frankly, has uncovered a lot of things that we find disconcerting. In addition, what I asked for, and Bernadette suggested, and I brought to you, was I felt that we needed to immediately take over to stop the bleeding immediately. We have done that. Now, what's happened is, by the way this process should work legally, they needed to get the information. Now, at the same time, it was my obligation as manager to, because of what I saw in the early stages, to tell FDLE that we could have a significant problem, is that they wanted an overview. We gave them the overview. They said, Mr. Manager, we will definitely look into this, but we want to wait until the audit, which is the actual issues that they can put their hands on, gets done. So we told them we would wait until that audit's done, and we've been pushing Bernadette to try and be complete as you can to get it done. So she got that done. That's being transmitted now to FDLE. Now, while that's going on, you have to remember that her audit was really through till the end of September. My staff, in uncovering issues and looking for things, and you have to understand, we sent people down there. The only way I can describe their records is a mess. So it was way worse than we thought. And so we have had to spend so much time digging through stuff, and as she said, trying to either authenticate or find deficiencies where we're in the process of doing that. We are still doing that for the period of time that she is not audited, which is from October 1 on, because we still have numerous things that we believe are problematic. I'm doing that in context with Dan and the law department. And in fact, he's assigned one of his attorneys who's actually taking notarized statements from people. So or not notarized, but sworn statements from people. So this is very serious. We're taking all this very serious. So that's going on, and so you really need to look at what the steps are. Charlene, you want to touch that based on what you've been doing? They've spent a lot of time on this.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weaver.
Good afternoon. Yes, just to kind of tell a little bit about what we've been doing. Bernadette did come to me in December, told me that she had some concerns. Because the council wasn't meeting again until January 5th, we did not schedule our interview with Ms. Carney until January 5th. We needed to give her an opportunity to explain some of the issues that were before us. As Mr. Deneen said, at that point, we recommended that the finances be taken over by the county, and since that point, we have been deeply involved, myself, my deputy, Rhonda Orr, as well as my county director, Donna DePeister. All three of us at that level, not below us, have actually been looking at all of these documents to determine whether there was something that we needed to be concerned about. And we have found quite a number of things that we're concerned about that go beyond Bernadette's audit, that are in the period of time from October through January 17th. And so we continue to conduct those reviews. I have sat in on all of the interviews that the county attorney's office has conducted. We have had one individual who has declined to come in and speak with us. But other than that, people have been very cooperative. A couple of things that I don't think Bernadette mentioned to you that I will mention to you, there were some payments that were made in advance, which is something that we do not do. We do not pay individuals in advance. We do not pay companies in advance. At Southeast Volusia Advertising Authority, there are many instances where money was paid in advance, and then cash was requested back. And so we're trying to track all of that down. There have been some additional workers' comp claims, and the records, I will tell you, were in disarray. They were incomplete, and we've had a difficult time finding all the pieces and parts that we needed to determine what we had and what we didn't have. As well as the inventory, as you know, we made a request for a number of items to be returned to us that were missing from the facility. Many of those were returned, not all of them were returned. We're still missing some public records, and we're still missing a number of items. But we did make an attempt to try to retrieve as much as we could that we could document that, that we knew had been there and that we wanted returned. So we continue to work with the county attorney's office. We continue to document our findings and turn them over to the county attorney's office, working closely with them. I feel like I've been part of the audit team, to be honest with you, working very closely with Bernadette and her staff. And our own audit, County of Volusia's audit, has we've been having to do that at the same time. So it's been kind of a challenge for us, but we're working our way through it.
Mr. Chair.